Hello students, this video lesson is a recap of lines and angles. We will be concluding this chapter in this video lesson, and in the next video lesson we will be beginning with the new chapter, that is chapter number 7, triangles. Let us now summarize this chapter and look into what are the things that you need to remember from chapter number 6. These are some of the important definitions from this chapter. If you remember, all these definitions were given to you long back, and I presume you have already copied them down in your notebook. Reflex angle, what are adjacent angles, complementary and supplementary angles. We have also done problems based on complementary and supplementary angles. Then you need to know what are collinear points and non-collinear points. You know that reflex angle, the angle which measures more than 180 degree but less than 360 degree is a reflex angle. Then complementary angles, when the sum of the measures of two angles is 90 degree, they are complementary to each other. In supplementary angles, the sum of the measures of two angles will total to 180 degree. Collinear points. To determine whether points are collinear or not, you need minimum of 3 points, right? 3 or more points will help you decide whether the points are collinear or not. 2 points will always be collinear because a line will always pass through 2 points. Then you have non-collinear points. Go through all these definitions. These definitions are important from this chapter. Also, you need to know what are linear pair of angles and what are vertically opposite angles. Let us look into what all you need to know more from this chapter. These are a couple of problems from this chapter based on complementary and supplementary angles. Now, these questions are not given in the textbook, but we have had a video lesson based on complementary and supplementary angles. Two complementary angles whose ratio is 4:5. We have done such type of problems where the ratio is given, and in such case you will take the common multiple to be x. So you get it as 4x and 5x, and 4x plus 5x will total to 90 because they are complementary angles. Same is the case here. They are supplementary angles. The ratio is given as 3:2. So 3x plus 2x will be equal to 180 degree, and then you can find the measure of these angles. Now these two are slightly different. We have done these two problems in the earlier video lessons. You could have a look at it. So what I intend to tell you out here is do problems based on complementary and supplementary angles from this chapter. Now let us look into what else do you need to know from lines and angles. Now there are many theorems in this chapter, but these two theorems, that is theorem 6.1 and theorem 6.7, I want you to learn to prove them. So 6.1 theorem states that if two lines intersect each other, then the vertically opposite angles are equal. Now in this figure, angle AOD and angle BOC are vertically opposite. Angle AOC and angle BOD are vertically opposite. But if you remember, how do you begin this theorem? You have to take angles in a linear pair and start proving it by using these two angles. Any angle in a linear pair you have to take, and if you remember one of the angles, you will repeat in the next step. So we have done the proof of this theorem. Go through this proof, it is very important. Similarly, this theorem, angle sum property of a triangle. You need to know how to prove that the sum of the angles of a triangle is 180 degree. The proof of this is already done. Also, a MATLAB activity was conducted based on this theorem. So a reminder, I want you to complete the MATLAB activity 2 in your MATLAB book. Let us see what other theorems are there from this chapter. Now remember the following theorems: alternate angle theorem and converse of alternate angle theorem. So what is the difference between alternate angle theorem and the converse? In alternate angle theorem, the statement is when a transversal intersects two parallel lines, then the alternate angle so formed will be congruent. But in the converse of alternate angle theorem, the statement is a transversal intersects two lines, and if a pair of alternate angles are congruent, then the lines become parallel. Similarly, in converse of corresponding angle theorem, there is a transversal intersecting two lines, and if a pair of corresponding angle is congruent, then the lines become parallel. Similarly, the case of converse of interior angle theorem, there is a transversal intersecting two lines, and if a pair of interior angle is supplementary, then the lines become parallel. So that is the difference between the alternate angle theorem and its converse, corresponding angle theorem and its converse, interior angle theorem and its converse. What I want you to do is just remember the statements of these theorems. Okay? Proving of these theorems, if you know, well and good, but I want you to remember the statements. That is most important. Okay? And you have to know how to prove those two theorems. That is, when two lines intersect each other, the vertically opposite angles are congruent and angle sum property. So those two theorems are very important for proving, and these theorems you just have to remember the statements. Now, if you look at these diagrams, these were some of the revision questions that was done in the earlier video lesson. It was given as homework. I hope you have solved them with proper statements and steps. The answers to these were also given. So revise these diagrams, revise these questions. What you need to know from lines and angles. Make a note of this. Exercise 6.1. From that exercise, these are some of the important questions. I have not noted down 5 here. You make a note of this: 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. These are important questions. From exercise 6.2, you need to know how to solve the first one, second, third, fourth, and the fifth one. Now, exercise 6.3 is a very important exercise. You have to learn how to solve all the questions from exercise 6.3. Go through all the definitions which are there in the textbook, and also those definitions were done in the earlier video lessons. Then some revision questions that we just saw. Go through those diagrams, practice them. Complementary and supplementary angles, it was dealt extensively. We have done problems based on complementary and supplementary angles. Then two important theorems. There are many theorems, but out of that, there are two important theorems that you need to learn how to prove. There are other theorems. You have to remember the statements of those theorems. Then you need to know what is an exterior angle of a triangle. How many exterior angles does a triangle have? Every triangle has 6 exterior angles. Okay, remember to identify those exterior angles. Then you also have the remote interior angle theorem, that is, the exterior angle is equal to the sum of the opposite interior angles. And then finally, I want you to complete the MATLAB activity. So those who have not done, please complete the MATLAB activity on angle sum property of a triangle. So students, this is a recap of whatever we did from lines and angles. A part of lines and angles was there for the first semester. 6.2 and 6.3 was done after the first semester examination. Go through those exercises carefully, do it thoroughly. In the next video lesson, we will be starting with chapter number 7. Okay, so students, I want you to remember these points from lines and angles. Do all these sums carefully. Do your homework questions that was given in the earlier video lessons. And in the next video lesson, we start off with a new chapter, triangles, that is chapter number 7. So until then, goodbye students and take care.